Title: Wife of 20 years served me divorce papers at my dad's funeral. She smirked and said, "Your family fortune is legally mine now." My kids refuse to even look at me. We're changing our last name to our stepdad's. The church bells were still echoing when she handed me the papers. Right there, beside my father's casket. Her nails were polished black, her smile, calm, practiced. "Consider this closure," she whispered, slipping the divorce documents into my hand like a final insult. "Your family fortune is legally mine now." My son looked away. My daughter's hand rested in her stepdad's. He stood behind them, tall, smirking, the man I'd once called my business partner. When my daughter finally spoke, her words were knives. "We're changing our last name to his. You're dead to us anyway." I didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't cry. I just folded the papers, placed them in my coat, and left my father's funeral without saying goodbye. That's how long I'd built everything, brick by brick, deal by deal, late nights in offices that smelled of old coffee and ambition. I gave them everything. Her, the house, the vacations, the laughter. Them, the schools, the futures, the illusion of safety. I used to believe loyalty was unbreakable if you built it with love. But love, I learned, is only loyal to whoever signs the checks. The signs had been there, of course. Her new perfume, expensive, one I didn't buy. Late-night meetings that didn't match her calendar. My kids pulling away slowly, their words filtered through her tone. But I ignored it, because a man raised to protect his family will forgive 1,000 small betrayals before admitting he's living in one. Until that day. Until the funeral. That's when something in me stopped bleeding. I didn't drink. I didn't lash out. I just went quiet. Grief has a way of clearing noise. I began listening, really listening, to the things people said when they thought I was broken. Her lawyer called mine within 48 hours. They'd been planning it for months. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was a clean kill. They believed the funeral would distract me, that I'd be too lost in mourning to fight back. They were half right. But I've always been a planner. And my father, he'd taught me one lesson worth more than any fortune. Never let them see your anger. Anger reveals timing. Silence conceals strategy. So I smiled through the ashes. And I started planning. I hired no one. Outsiders talk. Instead, I used what I had: old contacts, quiet loyalty, and time. My wife, no, my ex-wife, was moving assets fast. Houses, accounts, trusts, all in her name. What she didn't know was that 6 months before my father's death, I'd shifted everything under a holding corporation registered under his name. A legal fortress, ironclad. Technically, the family fortune she thought she owned belonged to a trust my father had established, one she couldn't touch without the approval of its executor. The executor was me. But I didn't stop there. I wanted truth to burn them, not paperwork. I began feeding information, emails, subtle breadcrumbs about accounts she didn't know existed, properties hidden overseas. Enough to tempt them, enough to make them move recklessly. And they did. Her new husband transferred funds illegally through one of my shell accounts. Money laundering, unregistered assets, falsified signatures. All traceable, all recorded. I didn't need revenge through violence. I needed silence to turn into evidence. A week later, they hosted a new beginnings party at the mansion I'd built. Laughter, champagne, the kids in designer clothes, her ring flashing under soft lights. While they toasted to their victory, my lawyer slipped an envelope into her hand at the front door. Inside, a notice of audit from the IRS, copies of the forged transfers, and one letter. My letter. For 20 years, I built a legacy of love. You turned it into currency. Now you'll pay in kind. J. She didn't read it right away, but my daughter did. That night, around 9:47 p.m., my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. Sophie. When I answered, I heard tears. "Dad," she shouted, "how could you hide this from us? The money, the trust. Mom said it was ours." I listened, calm. Then I said the only thing that mattered. You chose your side. Now live with it. And I hung up. Within days, their empire cracked. The audit froze their accounts. The new husband, now implicated in fraud, fled the country. She tried to salvage what was left, but her name was already tainted. The mansion was repossessed, cars gone, friends vanished. I watched it all unfold from a quiet apartment overlooking the river. No celebration, no champagne, just silence. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't need applause. Weeks later, I visited my father's grave. The autumn wind had stripped the trees bare, and the world felt honest again. I told him everything, how the house was gone, how the truth had surfaced, how the kids, my kids, finally understood what she'd done. They sent messages, apologies wrapped in guilt. I didn't reply. Forgiveness is a luxury for those who can afford to forget. I can't. Instead, I mailed one final envelope, this time to Sophie and Daniel. Inside was a single photograph, the three of us, from before. On the back, I wrote, "Some things can't be rebuilt. Some can. The choice isn't mine anymore. I haven't heard back. But sometimes, when the wind shifts, I imagine they'll understand. Not the revenge, not the money, but the silence that comes after justice is done. The calm, hollow peace of a man who lost everything except his edge. I didn't destroy them out of hatred. I did it to remind them that betrayal has a cost. They thought they buried me at my father's funeral, but they only buried the man who believed in mercy. The one standing over the ashes now, he's something else entirely. And he's finally free."